This was actually almost a perfectly adapted episode of Tokyo Ghoul. I am very surprised I'm actually saying that. There's only two major things that were changed, and they're big, but in terms of everything prior to this episode, I am actually thankful for this episode. But there is a lot of glaring issues with this episode that's not related to what they forgot to add in, but more along the lines of art and animation. So it now seems to be apparent that we need to sacrifice the art and animation to be able to have a good episode in terms of adaptation. That's kind of what it seems to be from what I can see from the episode. This episode, I actually enjoyed it quite a bit. And I'm very surprised with actually how it was handled, and for the good reasons and the bad reasons. But before I get into the content of this episode, I need to clarify something, because, you know, anime-onlys or people that are new to the series or whatever, they were not understanding what I was talking about when I started off with how they didn't show the famous face from Pineapple-chan and all that. And many are like, Chibi, you know it's in the preview for next episode, right? That's what everybody was saying. And, you know, let me just show you the side-by-side comparisons of the manga and the anime for the last episode and then this episode. So it was a very similar facial expression, but the other one that I showed in my last, you know, episode review, that's the one that they cut out and they were very lazy with. So clear as day that, you know, they're completely different. So anyone that was trying to say, but Chibi, they did add it, you're just dumb, well, there you go. No, they did not add it. They just decided to adapt another face for, you know, this episode. We have some things with Mutsuki that is removed, and it's, kind of, once again, relatively important. I mean, ever since the beginning of, Tokyo Ghoul, we've had it to where Mutsuki, overall her characterization, to her being a girl, it continuously gets cut out. And the panel here that was cut out from this, you know, episode, it was basically letting us know once again that Mutsuki was a girl. It was confirmation, if you still did not believe, that she was a girl, because she was on her period. That's what that panel represented. And so they completely cut that out from this episode. Now, to be honest here and be completely frank, I understand why they cut that one out. But the thing is that they've already cut so much out from her character that it just, like, if you honestly don't know, you're gonna think that Mutsuki is a dude. And it's just, like, it's very weird. It doesn't hold much weight to the events to come later off in the future. And since this is gonna be, like, apparently 24 episodes, that just makes things even more complicated, because you're like, how are you gonna do certain things with Mutsuki in the future if you're once again trying to hide the fact that Mutsuki is actually a woman? Now, Takiyomi, if you are an anime only somehow, you're not really going to understand how significant that moment was when Takiyomi choked out the ghoul and basically snapped. It's not going to matter much to newcomers to Tokyo Ghoul, because you're not really fully aware of Kuroiwa and, you know, Takiyomi and all that. You're not really aware of how crazy they are as investigators. And in the manga, it's clarified in the scene where Takiyomi's, you know, wrapping his arm around, you know, the clown and all that and about to strangle him. That scene, it represents showing that normal humans shouldn't be able to do something like that to a ghoul. And it was a reminder by Ishida himself in the manga chapter that a ghoul's strength is about 4 to 7 times stronger than an average human. And if, you know, theoretically, if a human could get somewhere that strong, like 4 or 7 times stronger than a normal human, then they would be able to resist a ghoul. Because ghouls do have more strength than an average human being. They're able to do things that normal humans cannot. Pick up things and all of that. And so, with Takiyomi doing what he did to that clown, basically, it showed that he is very, very abnormal as an individual. And the reason why is because his family line in general is very abnormal, like the Kuroiwas, and that was actually kind of already established in Part 1 Tokyo Ghoul. But like I said, if you're an anime only or whatever, or if you're reading the manga alongside of the anime, then you're not really going to understand that. So, just to clarify right there, if you were unaware. Now, the other stuff that was miscellaneous that they cut out from this episode is actually more along the lines of censorship. There was a lot of censorship with this episode of Tokyo Ghoul. And I'm not talking about censorship like, putting black bars or whatever over certain scenes. No, there was actually legit censorship to where they cut out certain panels from this episode that weren't properly adapted. For instance, you have the entire scene with, Sato when he was eating, the head and all that from the last episode, which if you are an anime only, you're not going to understand what Sato did in that moment. You don't know that he ripped off the head and he was just, gobbling it down. And you see the blood and all that at the beginning of the episode, but you still won't know what exactly he's eating. And in the manga, you actually get to see the man just, chowing down, spinning, rotating, and all that. You see how he's eating the face. It's a very weird and grotesque moment, and it was completely censored. There was a lot of scenes throughout this episode completely censored. When it comes to Sato, when it comes to stuff with Nutcracker, there was a lot of things here and there throughout the episode, and that's the biggest stuff that they actually really did, take out from this episode. So, let's get into the major issue that everybody's having a problem with, and that is the animation. Now, I feel like many are going to notice how bad the animation was for this episode. Even if, you're not fully aware of art and animation, I think many are going to realize something was very off with this episode, because there's many scenes throughout this episode with the fighting that just looked very stiff. Like, you see how there was a lot of still frames, it was panning to just how it was a zoom in on the characters' faces, and then, zoom back out and all that. You see little objects go across the screen, it's kind of like paneling the objects, moving them and all that real quickly. It was very bad. The animation was very lazy, very bad, and you could tell it was very cheap, quickly done, and put together, and this made the episode very bland. Even though a lot of it is actually kind of a good adaptation from the manga, it's kind of like what they did is color the manga panels, censor some things, and then applied it to the anime. That's kind of what they did. It was more of a slideshow when it came to the fighting segments of this episode. And it was very apparent because when you would compare something like My Hero Academia, you see how there's a lot of in-between frames and all of that between the fighting, and then you look at something like this episode, and you can see that there's, one moment to the next. They're cutting to the next moment, one after another in the fight. For instance, just zooming in, zooming out, things coming in like Hagane and all that, coming in, and then zoom back out. That's all they were doing throughout the episode, and it just seemed very poor. But, that's the biggest issue, I guess, with the episode, and, besides that, it's relatively decent. Uri's character. I feel like many seeing his character, they're gonna realize why he's such a scumbag, because he purposely decided to take Mutsuki in the middle of danger to be able to get his credits. It's very amazing to see how far Uri's character has come, because, I remember when I first started Tokyo Ghoul, I remember that I did not like him at all, and now he's one of my personal favorites in the manga, and just seeing what he did in this episode being scummy, it just reminded me of how far he's really come along as a person, and he's taking Mutsuki in the middle of the danger and all that, he's, trying to get his credit, he's, being attacked by, Big Madam, and I'm just like, yo, speaking of Big Madam, that entire scene, that was pretty funny. There was a lot more emphasis with it, though, in the manga, but it was still a pretty funny scene nonetheless, because this man that wants his credit just got wrecked by Big Madam and all that, so I got a good laugh just from this episode. But, that's pretty much it. The episode is, how can I say it? It's bordering the good side for me. Like, it's mostly good, but there is issues, and still, if they continue the way they're going with the series, like if they can, once again, continue the pacing like this episode, and up the animation art just a little bit more, we would have a really good anime on our hands. So once again, this is a step in the right direction for the Tokyo Ghoul anime. If they can continue this, then this series is going to become enjoyable, really good. But once again, I feel really bad for anime onlys, because they're going to be confused as hell with this episode. There's just so many things going on with the clowns, to Takeyomi, to Mutsuki, to the stuff with Matsu and all that. There's just so many things throughout this episode that's going to be downright freaking confusing. And also the stuff on Matsuri as well, how he was relying on Uri to find, the ghouls hiding and all that from the auction, and he was counting on that fact that Uri wouldn't try to go and get Mutsuki help. Just these little scenes here and there, I know it's going to confuse a lot of people that have been watching this if you're an anime only, and in a lot of ways I do feel bad, because it's just like, I know they want to stick to being an anime only, but it's at this point to where you've got to read the manga to truly understand what is going on. Because if it does continue to follow the true, adaptation of Tokyo Ghoul, it's going to get even more confusing as it goes along for anime only. So that's not counting the stuff they've cut out, which is going to be very confusing because it's just not going to have any context to it at all. But that's pretty much it. It's a great episode. I actually would love more of this. I mean, if I have to sacrifice animation for a good adaptation, you know what, all means, I'll go for it. I mean, the main reason why, many are probably going to say, but Chibi, you didn't like Berserk. Let me kind of explain something on that, okay? The reason why I didn't like the Berserk adaptation, even though, I complained on the CGI, wasn't mainly the CGI that made me upset with the series. It was the fact that they didn't properly adapt it. And then, on top of that, it was the horrific CGI. So, I don't drop series or hate series just because the art animation looks bad. I'm actually pleased with this episode. So, there you go. That's my opinion on this week's episode of Tokyo Ghoul Re. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoy my content, please subscribe. If you like this video, please leave a like. And tell me your thoughts on how you feel about, all the things that they removed or the things they did right with this episode. Chibi out.